So good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Right now we are about to start our talk on sustainability message on COVID crisis. And here we are live uh, as the representative of Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center. So here we are about to talk and then we will have the discussion. So we are here and waiting for some attendees. I can see that there are Kun Dora is here also. So we will wait a little bit to see that people will gathering around. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, right now, may I talk a little bit about our center, Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center. So here we are now have Kun Veen Metavi will be another panelist with us. Can you introduce yourself, please?
สวัสดีค่ะ My name is Metavi and I will be moderating this session with Kun Noni.
Okay. So I think shall we start? Okay. So let me explain our discussion and also the talk today. So our speaker, Kun Dora, will give us the talk for 40 minutes, and then later on we will have like discussion with the engagement meeting, like social engagement. So after 40 minutes of talk, Kun Dora we will arrange to let our attendees to speak and also to share experiences. Maybe some other people came from different countries, so we can have experiences like previously or before COVID situations, and also later on in the after COVID business, what it should be look like. So after the Zoom webinar, we will open the discussion and everyone can speak out, and also we can share if you would like to participate with our speaker, please welcome to join. So you can also like open the camera and give the talk, and then have some questions and want to ask more about the experiences. You can share and then we can exchange and also integrate the solutions together. So after that, we will do the engagement, and then we can have some games, and then after that, we will have the ending together. So let me introduce our speaker. We are honored to invite Kun Dora as a speaker today with the topic sustainability message of the COVID crisis. And let me introduce Kun Dora. So Kun Dora is the founder of Thrive Venture Builder, a social impact venture builder that looks at creating social ventures to help reduce problems within society, from education, poverty, to waste reduction. She was previously the head of studio at Santora Nakama, Thailand's first startup studio, before doing innovation consulting for corporations and universities in Thailand. So please welcome Kun Dora. Sae-Ho ค่ะ Thank you.
สวัสดีค่ะ Thank you, Kunutka. So glad to have everybody here with me, both on Zoom and also through Facebook. So as Kunut mentioned, good afternoon to some. I know we have a few people from Europe here with us in this session as well today. And good evening to a lot of people who are right now in Bangkok. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about sustainability in general, especially during this period of time in the COVID crisis. And as well as this, I'll be sharing with you how at Thrive, we've started to initiate a few more projects, initiate a few new ventures during this period of time as well. So just to start off, I think I'll do a little more detailed introduction of myself so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. And hopefully in the Q&A, I can also get to know everyone in this chat room, everyone in this Zoom conference a little bit better as well. So just let me share my screen to you so that we can get going. Okay, perfect. So as mentioned, today we're talking about the sustainability message of the COVID crisis in general. And I think this is for some, especially I've seen a few names in the room a moment ago, I think for some this is something that you're quite familiar with, but I think for a lot of people, sustainability is not really something that's on top of your mind all of the time. But I think like during this COVID crisis, we're starting to see the importance of it a little bit more. So as mentioned, I'm just going to do a quick introduction of myself. So my name is Dora. I'm Thai. I sound like I'm from California, but I'm actually not. And I'm currently founder at Thrive Venture Builder. This is a social impact venture builder that we look at creating sustainable businesses by integrating technology into it as well. And as well as this, I have co-founded a venture called Kid Hero. So this is a venture that I created because I saw that there was quite a big gap in the education system, not teaching kids how to think critically. And so that was how Kids Hero was set up, because we actually set that up believing that every kid is a hero in their own right and every kid should be a hero. So we should teach them to be heroes rather than limiting their scope of thought and their beliefs. As well as this, I'm venture lead at EdTech Asia. So you can see that a lot of it is quite focused on education. Education is something that's very close to heart because I believe education can help lift a lot of people out of poverty. Formerly, I was head of studio at Santora Nakama, so that was Thailand's first startup studio. And after that, I shifted over to look at business innovation at Lauren Corporation, which is an entity focused solely on improving the state of education here in Thailand. And as well as this, I lecture at Thammasat University in the fields of social innovation, and at King Mongkut's Institute of Technology, Lat Krabang, in software entrepreneurship. So you can kind of see I'm a bit all over the place. I've enjoyed my life in the tech space, but my heart is very close to the social impact space. So that's why Thrive was set up. So I graduated from July and spent a little bit of time at Stanford Graduate School of Business in the Ignite Venture program. And that was also where I got to do this little project here called Buoy. So this was a tech venture that we did in Stanford. And this was a bit on the social impact side, on the education side, on the social impact side. And with Buoy, we're looking at how to prevent suicide rates, or how to prevent the high rate of suicides in the Stanford area. So just to give you a bit of background, Stanford is in Palo Alto. Palo Alto has the highest suicide rate in the whole of the United States, simply because a lot of kids grow up in Palo Alto and they expect that they need to get into the top university, right? So a lot of the times we see a lot of the students within the area committing suicide because their grades, they thought their grades weren't good enough, or they were super stressed out about a lot of things that was going on in their life. So that was why during my time there, I worked with fellow students in the Faculty of Education, as well as other students in the venture program to create Buoy, to be able to allow us to be able to track the social well-being of students. And so that was one of the social ventures that kind of popped up during that time. But throughout my career, I've kind of jumped in and jumped out of the social impact space. Another social impact, another social venture that I previously worked for is actually Sae-Ho Organic. I think a few people may have heard of Sae-Ho Organic before. So working with them, we were trying to create a business to improve the lives of Thai farmers through jazzberry rice. So that was a lot of fun. That was actually where I learned about the term social enterprise itself. So I think in this room, there may be a few people who are familiar with the word social enterprise and a few people who are not so familiar with the word social enterprise. So I'm just gonna do a little kind of walkthrough regarding the thought of social enterprise. So this slide comes from Social Enterprise Alliance. So as you can see here, a social enterprise is kind of like the middle ground between a traditional nonprofit and creating a business, right? So a lot of the times, what we see is people are always thinking, well, you know, if you're doing good, you shouldn't be making money. I think that's what a lot of people think about, like a lot of the time. If you're doing good, you shouldn't be making money. But on the contrary, the thought is, if you're doing good, but you don't make money and you don't survive, then that doing good that you're doing is not really going to survive in the long run. So that's why in the past few years, well, I guess in the past like few decades actually, the term social enterprise has consistently popped up, and more people are starting to be aware of it, but a lot of people are still not aware of it from going around in Bangkok or in Thailand talking to people. A lot of people are still not quite aware of the concept of social enterprises. Hopefully after this, in the Q&A session or in the discussion session, we can talk a little bit more about social enterprises and like the differences in each respective country. But yeah, so in the end, what I did was I jumped into the social enterprise space through Sae-Ho Organic and Jazzberry, and got to understand that you can, you know, maximize your social profit as well as do a repayment of the invested capital. But of course, what we're looking at for social enterprises is not it's not really the same space as, you know, when we're looking at startups, because when we're talking about startups, we're looking at like 10x or 20x returns on the investment that people put in. But for social enterprises, when people invest in social enterprises, they look at more at the social impact that can be generated through the social enterprise. So I think a lot of you might be thinking right now, like, okay, so like, why does all of this matter, right? Like, why? So, okay, it sounds like a great idea. Social enterprises sound like a great idea, but in the end, like, why does this all matter during this COVID period of time? So I just want to show you, so this came from the Bangkok Post. So this is actually an opinion of Kun Parita, but this was posted in the Bangkok Post last month during April. And here we see the heading being virus fight sees impoverished go hungry. And I think if a lot of you are following the news here in Bangkok in Thailand right now, you're really seeing that. You're really seeing a lot of people struggle during this period of time. And I know last month in Bangkok, one thing that has been, a lot of people have been talking about is actually the spike in suicide rates in this year in comparison to the previous years. So I think from what I remember, it was like more than triple the amount of people committing suicide. And if you look at the news, a lot of the time you see, so Thailand has a 5,000 baht subsidy, has a 5,000 baht subsidy that, and what happened there was people were committing suicide because they did not receive that subsidy. And I think that's quite troublesome to see in a country, especially where we still have a large chunk of our population in the bottom of the pyramid. So we have we have an income pyramid, and there's quite a big chunk of our population that's in the bottom of the pyramid. And if people are committing suicide over 5,000 baht, I think that's the worrying thing, because you never really know how many more will then think of it in the same way. So I know not so long ago, we started seeing this in Bangkok. So in Thailand, we call it tupan soup. And it's awesome to see, people who still can look after themselves, coming out and helping people who are not as fortunate to be able to survive during this harsh time. But in the end, I think this goes back to the same thought of sustainability, right? Because if you're really thinking that, in the end, everyone can survive COVID through donations, then the donations are as good as how long people are willing to donate. And if in the end, there's been a lot of drama going on in Thailand about how, people have been coming into these cabinets filled with food and just taking everything at once. And when news came out, you started to see a lot of people were, venting their frustrations, and saying like, hey, well, we're donating, people should not be taking everything all at once, they should be sharing. But I think that's really the hard truth, right? Because so many people are not surviving, so many people are struggling, that even if you tried to stop them from taking whatever it is in that cabinet, if they feel that there is an uncertainty in the future for them, they're going to take that, whatever is in the cabinet anyway. I mean, I want everyone, in who's like listening right now, just to think of ourselves. I know, like Bangkok, right at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, we were running out of toilet paper, right? Everybody was just buying toilet paper, and everybody was drying frozen food. And I think that's exactly the same, because we were also unsure what was going to happen in the future. So when we were unsure of what was going to happen in the future, we hoarded whatever we could and paid for it. And I think it's exactly the same for the people in the lower tier of the population at the moment, because they're also unsure of their future. So when they're unsure of their future, what they decide to do is stock up in case they can't find anything else in the future. So I really think you can't blame them for taking whatever it is in the tupan soup. But I do feel that what needs to happen is we need to find a better way to ensure that people will continue to survive in the long run. So with that in mind, there was also, after kind of like mulling over that and really thinking all of that through, I was going through a few books, and I started reading up on like this whole concept of, reducing inequality and reducing poverty. And I came through this little diagram. So this is a concept called trickle-down economics. So Thailand and a lot of countries all around the world operate on trickle-down economics. So when we say trickle-down economics, what does that mean? It means if we're looking at this triangle on the screen as our income curve, what you can actually see is that there are people who are at the top. So people at the top are the richer part of the country. And trickle-down economics is a belief that if you were able to give more money to the top, then that money will slowly trickle down to the bottom of the pyramid. So if rich people get more money, then more money will come down to the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Unfortunately, after many years of trying to prove this, it seems like it's not really working the way we think it is with trickle-down economics. Because if you were to give people at the top of the pyramid more money, typically they'll spend 30% of that. Now, if you were to give the working class more money, they would be spending a little bit more. 98%. But if you were to give the bottom of the pyramid more money, they would be spending the whole 100%. So I think when we're looking at this pyramid, then what we need to take into consideration is possibly not a trickle down economics, but more of a trickle up economics. So how can we make it so that the people at the bottom are able to generate more income so that they spend more and then the money flows up the pyramid rather than giving more to the top and making it trickle down? So that was kind of what I was mulling over. And I think in general, society can benefit as a whole if we can make that trickle up economics works a little better. Unfortunately, right now in Bangkok or in Thailand, we're seeing that that's not working. So after working a lot with people in the communities and people in the lower income areas in Thailand, what I do see is the moment they earn their money, they look to spend it somewhere where they can get things at a cheaper rate. So typically they will then go into 7-Eleven, where then that money immediately shoots to the top. So there's no actual flow of money within the bottom of the pyramid itself. So that's also one thing that we need to look at to make sure that society benefits as a whole. And in my perspective, what I'm hoping is that, once more people are aware that society can benefit as a whole, then people will be more aware that everyone can be a change maker, right? So everyone who's listening, who is in this room and now kind of see that, we can actually help more people just by giving people at the bottom of the pyramid more income. You can also be the one who creates the change for society as a whole. And the reason why I say this is because this is kind of what we've been doing in the past month, kind of very randomly. And I love the word random because I feel like my team is often like that, very spontaneous and random. My team is often very spontaneous and random. In the past month, we've kind of created like 2 new projects now transitioning into ventures. So the 2 projects are called What the Fruit. We were playing along with that because of the WTF that people are thinking it might not be What the Fruit, but it might be something else. And another one is a little venture that we've continued on from What the Fruit called Hope Loop. So these 2 ventures we've just created, they're both about a month old. One of them has now gotten funding from the US Embassy here in Thailand. And we're hoping to take that next level and be able to help more people in the communities with that. So I'm just gonna give you a little walkthrough of how we did it and how you can also do it. Because it was actually really easy, really simple. And I think the most important thing is not to overthink and just kind of jump in and try doing something and seeing what happens when you start. So as I mentioned, I lecture in university. So this is like a little lecture slide. So the concept that typically at Thrive, we use a lot to create our new ventures is we use the concept of design thinking, right? So a lot of the time what happens is people jump in thinking they're gonna solve a problem without really understanding who they're trying to solve the problem for or what problem it is that they're trying to solve. So for us, we started off by trying to understand the problem a little bit more by talking to the people who seem to be struggling quite a lot during this period of time. So that's kind of like the empathy phase at the very beginning, and then you go through define, ideate, prototype, test. So what we did for What the Fruit and Hope Loop is we kind of did a lot of empathizing and a lot of prototyping, just to kind of test things out to see if people were interested, in what we had to offer in how we were trying to help people who were struggling during this period of time. So the whole idea started one day when I was social isolating myself at home. So I think I've been at home for about 2 weeks. I was extremely bored, but I was running out of food. So what I was doing during that period of time is I would actually go to the grocery store like once and stock up for 1 to 2 weeks, and I would go out to the grocery store again, just to make sure that, you know, I didn't go out, I had like minimal contact with everybody else. So that day I walked out to the grocery store, and what happened was we have our wind motorbikes, right? Wind motasai in Thailand, we call them. So at the front of my soy is the guys who drive the local motorbikes for you to go from place to place. So I walked up to them, and they seemed to not even care that I wanted to hitch a ride with them. And then all of a sudden, one of them looked up, and he seemed really, really surprised. And then I was like, yeah, like I was waiting here for a while, but it seems like no, like, are you guys working today? Or, you know, are you guys not working? And then he told me like, well, it was actually, they didn't think they were gonna get any customers today at all, because they were there for 4 hours. I went out at 2, and they've been there from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, and they didn't have a single customer who were going to, you know, ride the motorbike. So I was like, so wait, you've been waiting here for 4 hours, and your first customer is me, who is taking a ride like 2 kilometers down the road for 20 baht. So you're gonna be getting 20 baht for the entire day. And 3 of you are not gonna be getting 20 baht, because there were 4 people who were waiting for people to catch a ride. And I was like, well, that's crazy, because how are you gonna live off 20 baht a day? Like you're never gonna be able to live off 20 baht a day. So I think when that thought popped into my head, then I started talking more with the motorbike drivers on what their life was like, and, you know, how it would be possible to help them. Would they be willing to kind of, you know, send stuff if I had anything to send? So I started trying to find random jobs for them, like sending kimchi to my mom. I'd ask them to like send stuff over to my parents, you know, but I felt like that wasn't enough. And then at the same period of time, there was quite a bit of people online who were also saying, you know, they had a lot of fruits. So farmers who were in other provinces in Thailand had a lot of fruits. And because practically our whole country was shut down, no one was buying any of the fruits. So they were just throwing away tons and tons of fruits without being able to do anything. So I think at that moment, I just didn't think much. And I was like, well, I think I can kind of make something happen. So what I did was I contacted one of the fruit sellers. So he was a cantaloupe seller. And I asked him, I told him like, yeah, so maybe if I can have like, this is very random. So please, yeah. So I asked him like, yeah, so maybe if you can send me over like 300 kilos of cantaloupe, like I'll pay for the 300 kilos and I'll see what I can do with it. And I actually had no idea what I was gonna do with it. So 300 kilos of cantaloupe came over to my place, and I started panicking a bit. So then I told I sent out a Facebook blast, and I was like, well, I have a lot of cantaloupe. Does anybody want to buy cantaloupe from like the farmers? And within a day, the 300 kilos were gone. And the motorbike drivers I hired the motorbike drivers to send like the cantaloupes to like lots of different places. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is actually, yeah, people are willing to help, right? And they get a product that they're trying to help for in actually a lower price than what they would be typically willing to pay for. So then I started ordering a bit more fruits and a bit more fruits and a bit more fruits. And in the end, they just had like so many fruits in my house. I was actually getting hay fever from all of the fruits that was just like lying around. So then I decided, maybe rather than trying to sell all the fruits differently, maybe we can kind of pull it all in and send it as like a mystery fruit box, because I actually had no idea what was going to come at what period of time, because the people at the logistics hubs in Bangkok were just so overwhelmed with all of everything that was, being sent through logistics that they couldn't send the stuff in time. So that was how What the Fruit started, because we just realized that, we didn't know what was gonna get to us in time. So we might as well, try to make something out of it. So What the Fruit now, what we do is we charge 300 baht, which is approximately like $10. And everyone who buys a box gets 5 kilos of fruits that we get from the farmers sent to their door by our delivery guys. So right now we're actually getting people who are ordering on a consistent basis. So people are like pretty much ordering every week to be able to, you know, make their smoothies, eat fresh fruits. So that was how What the Fruit started. And then I think after What the Fruit started, we started to realize that, well, you know, there were other problems as well, because of the bad logistics that was going on. We had a lot of fruits that we couldn't actually send to our customers because they were, you know, the moment I put them in the box, they're either going to melt away, or the moment it gets to the customer, it's not going to be a mango anymore, but it's going to be mango juice. So we decided, you know, maybe we can do some value add with those products. So what we then decided to do is jump into the communities, because at that period of time, I was still doing a few donation rounds. So we are compiling money and donating to people as well. And then once we started donating to people, we saw that there were a lot of people in the communities as well who also had no jobs left to do, because they were either they were either fired from their work, or they initially were people who actually brought work home to do. So in Thailand, we have a lot of people who will bring like garments and stitch garments at home and then send it to the factories again. So they had no jobs left to do. So when they had no jobs left to do, then we started realizing, well, then we can hire them to add the value to the fruit produce that we have, which was what we did. So we started, you know, doing blending some mango jam and blending a lot of fruit jams to kind of see what recipe would work. And now we're working with people in the communities to be able to get them to actually create these products themselves. The interesting thing is a lot of people ask us all the time, like, well, why do you work this way? Why don't you go in and see what they can do and, you know, try to create a demand for that? And I think we've so far we've been working both ways. So on the right of this, I think it's the right, it's my right on the screen. So on the right of the screen, you see some flaky, spicy looking things. So that's like chili paste. That's what the ladies in the communities can already make. So we hire them to make the chili paste, and then we find a market for that. Now, on the contrary, we also know, I mean, because, you know, us being middle or middle upper class, we're like on social media all the time. We see what our friends buy. We see what our friends are interested in. So we know then like what the current demand in the market is. And that's when we then also go over to the communities and ask them to create the products that matches the demand in the market as well. And through that, we actually train them to be able to do the products that we found that there is a demand for. So that's currently how we're currently working. Actually, today, I'm at home right now. I have people from the communities in my house right now as we speak, actually working on a few of the products with my team downstairs. So yeah, that's kind of how we've been operating. And for some of the products, we go into the communities. So this one for the chili paste, we go into the communities and work in the community with the aunties in the communities, and they're absolutely lovely. So, you know, they're super welcoming. They teach us a lot as well on how to like make stuff, because a lot of these a lot of the aunties, so in Thailand we call like our older ladies aunties because it makes them feel like they're a part of our family. So a lot of the aunties are actually they're street vendors as well. So they actually cook food during non-COVID periods. They cook food and they sell food on the streets. But because of COVID, they're unable to, like, even if they cook food and go out on the streets, no one is there to buy their food. So it's not worth it for them to go out on the streets. So that's kind of where we're also jumping in and trying to create the employment opportunities for them as well. Now, actually, the bigger picture that we have for all of this is micro entrepreneurship, but it doesn't really make, like, from a user-centric perspective, it doesn't make sense for us to talk about micro entrepreneurship with them right now, because right now, all they want is to be able to look after themselves, to be able to look after their kids during this period of time. So right now, we go in simply with the promise that we will be able to help them have an income during this period of time. But later on, once the trust is, kind of solidified there, we're hoping that we'd be able to actually get them to set up their own business and teach them the whole operations um, for creating these products as well. And I think with that concept of micro entrepreneurship, it's going to loop into the whole concept of microfinancing as well. So that's kind of how we've been working with the ladies within the communities. And so far, we've been doing this for a month. We're in 4 communities right now. We're hoping we can be in a bit more. So we're partnering up with a few universities who already have the database of all the communities in Bangkok, and then seeing, how we can plug in with them to make this a little bit, to be able to reach out to a few more people and help them during this time. So yeah, that was in a time period of a month, and hopefully it didn't sound too hard. Yeah, I really hope it didn't sound too hard, because it really wasn't difficult at all. I feel like the main thing that happened was we were just doing stuff without overthinking. And then after we did it, then we kind of figured out what we did and what we learned from it, and seeing how we can optimize it a little bit more, or who else we can help more in this entire process. So I think this stuck with me from when I was running Startup Studio, right? So it's the concept of just building, measuring, and learning. So you never really know what is going to happen until you actually do it. So the moment you do it, you'll know what happens. But if you don't do it, then you don't really know what's going to happen. So the best way that you can actually create a business, I guess, is to start small and see what you can do, and then see what else you can do after you've done that initial part that you've done. So I'm really hoping that we'll have a good discussion after this. But with this like little talk and session, I really hope that people would be interested to kind of jump into the communities and do a little bit more and see what you can do in the communities as well. Because honestly, I really think sustainability is going to be like the next really, really big thing. And I see this because as I mentioned, I do a lot of consulting for the bigger corporations here in Thailand as well. And prior to this, everybody has been more interested in the startup space. But now every time I talk about, creating sustainable startups, I see like eyes light up, because they want to understand it a bit more. They want to see what they can do to actually be able to make this world livable for everyone and not just a certain part of the population. And I think with that, it really needs the help of everyone to jump in and see, how you can help out and where you can help out and where it makes sense for you to help out, I guess. So yes, that's my little sharing session, I would say. So hopefully now we can open up the floor and, maybe also get some insights from people who are in this Zoom conversation as well. So if there's questions or if there's anything you want to share, please feel free. And I'll send this back to Kunut so that she can facilitate this a little bit better than I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kun Dora. Very nice presentation. And in the chat box, we also have some questions here. So let me think, should I answer here or should I to jump in? Let's answer some questions first. So at first that I have some questions from the Facebook.
Yep.
So can you just get back to the slide, which one that has the economic pyramid, whether from
Sure.
down? So could you explain a little bit more about that? How would it be possible to make it fluctuated from the bottom to up, or
Okay.
economics that is in the fundamental of the system of the business. Could you please explain that a little bit more?
Okay, perfect. So just let me get this slide up. So I'm thinking it's this one.
Yes,
I think
thank
probably
you.
the right one. Okay, so yeah, so I think right now we can do this in actually many different ways. So one is policy, right? But this is Facebook Live. I hope I can say this. I'm actually not the biggest believer of policies. I know I have a lot of awesome friends who are working in the policy area, and it's not like I leave policy to them because I know I would be an awful policy maker. But so I leave policy to them. But I think in terms of entrepreneurship, you can actually put more income to the bottom and make it trickle up by actually being a bit more fair with the people you hire, right? I think that's number one. And being more helping to get them to understand financial literacy in general a little bit better. So that's number two. And I think number three is actually helping to create, tools that will make it so that people within the bottom of the pyramid can actually continue the flow of money within their community. So for example, in Thailand, we have a lot of mom and pop shops. So, and a lot of these mom and pop shops will go buy products at a wholesale price somewhere. Yeah. And then they come into their own little communities and then they create, they run, their mom and pop shop. So they'll have like everything that's there that's similar to the 7-Eleven, but they're selling it. So something as simple as, going to the mom and pop shop and buying from the mom and pop shop so that at least that tiny bit of margin that they get from the products goes back to them. Like just something as simple as that can already help the flow of money at the bottom of the pyramid be better than if we were to directly walk into, one of the convenience stores of the bigger corporations and buy directly from them. Now, a lot of people will say, yeah, but the wholesaler is also from the big corporations, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree. So it's like, as mentioned, it's like that margin that the mom and pop shops will get more. Or, for example, a lot of the time, we're going to eat out at restaurants that might be owned by really, really large corporations. Now, on the contrary, there is also a lot of people who are in like the working class or in the lower part of the pyramid who are also, opening up restaurants or selling food. So I feel like something like that is also how you can contribute by putting your money at the bottom as well, so that the money can then flow in the bottom and the middle and not shoot directly up to the top. And so I'm actually gonna give you guys an idea, okay? And if you can do this instead of us, that would be great because we are super overwhelmed with everything that we're doing right now. So the concept of cloud kitchens is actually a really, really interesting concept for me. So, we're talking about how you can get all the aunties in the communities, set up a clean kitchen space where they can then cook in that cloud kitchen, right? And then we get these motorbike drivers to then, take the food that they've cooked and deliver it to everybody in the office building. So it's almost like a Grab competitor, right? Grab or Uber Eats competitor to a certain extent. But the money is going directly to the people who has never actually been able to, send their food through deliveries because majority of the time they're selling at the side of the street. But does the food taste good? Yes, like definitely the food tastes good, and can you help them do a quality control to then make it better? I think like that, can be the future of eating because then everybody gets food at affordable rates and the money goes to the bottom of the pyramid, right? So I think there's a lot of things that you can play around with and a lot of ideas that you can play around with to really make sure that the money kind of flows or not shoot to the top as fast as it currently is right now. So yeah, that was a very long answer to your question, but I think it helped.
Thank you so much for your answer. It's so new that you propose this idea. Is really intriguing for many people to think about it and trying to change. So let's move on. I think that there are so many people who want to participate and engage. So can I just shift to the discussion part, especially Professor Salt? I couldn't read all of your comments, very nice ideas. And could you please introduce yourself and also bring more discussions and also exchanging the knowledge or some situations that happened in your countries. I've heard that maybe you came from the different countries right now, Dr. Sauls came from Estonia. So could you please explain or tell us and also give us the idea how business as usual before and how is the situation right now and what could be done in the next phase after the COVID situations? What kind of business it should be and or anything that you can share to us and please share to us your ideas and also your comments or your comparison, whether the discussion that you can compare with your own country or what you get from this talk and from Dora, whether you can also bring up this context to use and also adapt and blend with your cultural kind of lifestyle that you can be. So can I just can anyone can and talk about it and then we can discuss about anything more. So okay. Anyone want to share the first comments or anything? Professor Salt, I saw that you have comments. Okay, please.
Hello everybody. My name is Zsolt Bugarski and greetings from Tallinn, Estonia. I was not familiar which way I will appear suddenly, and now I am. So I just try to see what is here, but I see is a very typical Zoom chat here. Okay, so thank you, Dora, for this wonderful presentation. I was very inspired, and it's really very amazing that it seems that many countries experience the same issues. Like you mentioned that people were buying up all the food and the toilet paper. Is the exact same happen in my home country is Hungary, but I've been living in Estonia for 8 years. I mean, in both countries, the same happened. And I have a question related to this motorbike project, connecting them with the farmers and buyers. That do you think this amazing chain you created very quickly will sustain, will remain there even after the crisis? So you just within 5 minutes created a business there, which is working forever?
Yeah, so I actually think it will work. And I think we're actually, within our team right now, we have one project that's going on where we're planning that next month, we're actually going to go into the provinces and collect the database of the farmers so that we can understand better what the farmers are planting, so that we can also then kind of link the farmers with the buyers. Because I think right now, the way that we're making these mystery boxes is that it's very random. and I know a lot of people don't like randomness in their lives. So they actually want a bit more clarity of, will they get a banana or will they get a passion fruit? So we want to kind of just go into the farmer level as well and try to consolidate the database so that we can also then find them other opportunities. So let's say they have, a few tons of melons would there be any factories who would be willing to buy the melons? And then we can link them through the database. So that's kind of the next step that we're looking at for that. Yeah.
Okay, it's very interesting. We are running a social entrepreneurship incubation program here in Tallinn, and we have projects which are dealing with this topic. They usually summarize themselves as the short supply chain movement. And it's very similar concept, connecting farmers and buyers directly, and they are also hiring this kind of motorbike guys or any kind of people who are dealing with transportation. And it's really an amazing idea. And I think many of us were and still are improvising today, because very quickly, very fast, we have to come up to solutions. And just like your wonderful story that you went down for the grocery and then you met these guys and you realize that they have the capacity to do something, even the trouble that not to do something. And this is something which you also call like micro entrepreneurship and the small scale business. And my question is that, is there anything in Thailand that is like more like a joint initiative, more on a system level? Here in Europe, we are many countries first, and then the entire European Commission has been organizing so-called online hackathon events. And these hackathon events addressed not only the traditional tech topics, and it was not like a software development or application development event, but addressing coronavirus issues. So very social, very health sector related or community related. And these events became very popular. It's like 20-something thousand people participated. A lot of corporations joined, governments joined, you know, and companies. And such way, it was not like sporadic small initiatives, but it seems relevant resources could channel to this kind of opportunities. So is there anything similar in your country or in your area?
I think we've had a few hackathons in Thailand so far, and I know there are definitely quite a few organizations who are starting to focus more on what in Thailand we call it like the new normal, right? And I think that that's a term that people all around the world are getting more familiar with. So hackathons, there are a few, and there are people who are working on it, but I still think there is there has not yet been like any event where like really every different part like comes in. And I think it's been like, you know, bits and bobs here and there. So I actually think, you know, if it was possible to really pull in like all the different players, then one, I think the exposure of the ideas that come out of the hackathon will be better. There would be easier collaboration between all of the different parties, and the impact that it would be able to create would definitely be bigger than, you know, if it was like a smaller initiative that, you know, we're kind of improvising and struggling on our own at different times. So actually, I think that might be one part that Sasin can and the Sustainability Center can definitely, you know, be like the lead of for like such a project, so that, you know, universities and the government and everybody can be pulled in to really help hack out what's going to happen like in the future.
Yeah, I encourage you to do that, because in Europe it worked very well, and I can see you have all the potential for this. So it will be great initiative to take.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Salt. So I have another question from Facebook. The question is, do you, to Kundara and all of the discussions, you can share your ideas or anything. So the question is, do you think the post-COVID landscape will see more funding opportunities, for example, like grants, investments, or otherwise for startups that tackle sustainability issue or its course? So can you give the idea about it?
I think personally for me, I know that globally the number of social impact and the number of social impact investments is continually rising. So I think there's definitely more people who are willing to invest their money into that part. I think one thing that we're still lacking in Thailand though is the ability to actually be able to measure our social impact. I know that's one big gap that we have because typically the price that you have to pay for like a social impact assessment is actually quite high. I think up to 10,000 previously before when I was working at Siam Organic, we were looking at something between like 10,000 US dollars just for a social impact assessment. So when that comes into play, it actually, the number of grants are increasing, the number of investments are increasing, but if we lack the human resource to be able to do the social impact assessment here in Thailand, then it actually means that the ability for the ventures to be able to get the grant money or get the investment money would actually be less. So yeah, that's like my 2 cents on the issue, but it's definitely on the rise.
And related to this question, I have a question from the attendees from Zoom. So for the business projects that you talked about earlier, the fruit and Hoop Loop, how do you intend to measure the impact of these two startups?
Yeah. So actually right now, the way that we're doing that is more on social return on investment, I guess. So we're looking at, because right now we're looking at getting these people out, like making them survive. So out of poverty and into survival mode. So we're looking simply right now, just looking at the level of income that we've helped them generate during this period of time. If there was us and if there wasn't us, like what does their income level look like? That's number one. So right now it's solely based on that for both the farmers as well as the daily wage workers that we work with. Hopefully in the future though, we'd be able to, I mean, right now we're too busy putting out fires, sending fruits all the time. So once we kind of get that operation in place, then we're gonna jump in and look at a little bit more on like the social impact value, because now going into the communities, we see there's a lot more problems than we thought there would be. So there's also other issues as well. So for example, there's the aging population and their inability to look after themselves, you know, that they're in the communities, or mental health issues within the communities as well. So I think that calls for other ventures, but we're gonna see what else we can dig into once we're more stable, I guess, in place.
Thank you.
So I just want to ask, like, how related to what you mentioned about the special needs group of people, like also like the elderly people, and also the people with disabilities. So what do you think that the startup or the new normals that it will be? Whether because the inequalities are a massive issue that we are talking about this. So whether what is the new normals will be for your foresee, for your expectations, or what do you want to be to look like?
I think that's a tough question. So, I mean, I just started reading a book called Utopia for Realists. I actually have the book in case anybody wants to take a look at the cover. Oh no, you can't see it. Okay, so this is Utopia for Realists. So the person who wrote it is Rutger Bregman. He's a Dutch historian, and so far the book has been amazing. And I think if I could pick, I would pick, you know, what he wrote in the book, so that like there's universal basic income for everyone. You know, the work days are shorter, but of course I think it's going to take a long time and a lot of work from my friends who are working on policy. So that's probably not going to happen anytime too soon, I think. But I think with this, the concept of new normal, I think a lot of people will then start to realize that the current, this is going to sound really weird for some people, I guess, but I guess like the current capitalist system is a bit flawed. And I think people will start to realize that in a bit. And that whole concept of trickle down economics, trickle up economics, I think more people will start to see that. And the reason why I say that is, so, you know, I know, I think a lot of you know that the malls opened up over the weekend in Bangkok. And my internet connection has not been very good during my work at home period. So I went in and tried to go into the malls. And the malls are open, but no one is there. The malls are very, very empty. But all of the stores are back to paying their rental rate at full rental rate. And a lot of the restaurants who they also said they've been struggling a lot over this two month time frame, they've opened up in the malls as well, but also no one's eating. And with the whole concept of social distancing that's occurring, what's happening in those restaurants is you have a table for 4, but only one person is able to eat at that table. So even if that restaurant is at full capacity, it would be at 1/4 of their previous full capacity. That means like the number of people who are going to be hired or more like going to be fired will also increase even though the city has opened up again. So I think just by looking at it from that perspective, and with more people in need consistently, I think then people will start to see that there needs to be a shift in some way to make it so that, you know, we're able to help the people who are in the working class and at the bottom without leaving them behind. So I'm really, really hoping that other people will see that this is not what we want it to look like, but what it has to look like to actually make sure that, you know, inequality in Thailand doesn't go further than it already is, and that not more people don't like die during this period. So yeah.
So from your experience, Kundora, with the COVID situation so far, have you seen the community coming together to make the community itself stronger?
Yep. I think I'm actually it sounds really weird, but I'm actually very grateful for this situation, because by going into the communities more than usual, like you really see how like humanity in its own right, you know, when I was going down to give out like the survival bags that we've packed. So we donated survival bags, and so often you'd see people who have nothing, and they would be telling me, you know, like, oh, you know, I don't need this. Like, give it to the house next door. Like, they need it more. And I mean, for me, I think it was heartbreaking, because it's like, but you're, in comparison to so many other people in society, like you're living like way below the poverty line, you know, and here we are, you know, like, please take this so that you can survive, but still they're trying to look out for other people. So I think if this didn't happen, then there would also be parts of that we wouldn't see. And I think even in the communities themselves, talking to community leaders, they're also saying, you know, the level that they're watching out for each other right now is also at an incredibly high scale. So like when the donations pour into the communities, then they'd actually look at, you know, is there an elderly in that house? What do they need more? Can we, you know, split all the donation bags that each separate house gets and then send it over, you know, to the house that needs it the most? So I think there really is that feeling, that community feeling that really is occurring. And I honestly really, really wish there would be more of that in the media here, because I think a lot of the time, everything that we see in the media is from like a middle upper perspective, I would say, and you really don't see like what's going on like at the bottom and how they're struggling, but they're also working really hard with each other to make sure that everybody can survive during this period.
So, and is anybody has any comments or sharing experiences about the social enterprise or something like this that in the community that they help each other? So, or also in some certain circumstances like this kind of situation of pandemic, and or even also the situation of disaster, like it's also that it's also equal to the situation, unexpected situations that happened, and then started with the people will help each other, started with the bottom up approach, like they are trying to survive and also bounce back to the resilience community. So is anyone has this kind of experiences, the stories that also share us and also accumulate ourselves approaches in either in Estonia or even in Thailand. So I'm not sure here. I also have Dr. Shirley. Can you share your experiences with the communities and also the social enterprise that you may be familiar with? So is that possible? Please welcome.
Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm being a little bit late running around. I mean the city, and also got some experience over the restaurant that the speakers just talking about. Yes, it is, and this is really impact. Even though the department store and all the economy they try to resume it back to normal, and the people would still psychologically people still feel like it's not safe. But so many people also coming out. What I think about what I have been doing the research on the social enterprise outside metropolitans, like outside the city itself, I've been working with a Phuket social enterprise. Found out that they really used to remote. I mean, in terms of engage with CBT. I mean, with community-based tourism. And so by using so, they're also using agents and using a lot of communications, which is remote. The only thing that I feel and hope that those kind of tourism should come back first, because it's really impact to the economy of the communities, and it's easily to connect and also get impact right away after the open the sky and also maybe the transportation that you let. But of course, those kind of CBT, we're not going to attract those economic or main target like Chinese or South Korea, because those will go for the major attractions. But the CBT would be for other targets. So may I ask that, do you think that those kind of situation, will it be possible that we can open and coming back, just like I heard that Sweden don't have any case, so they still open normally and also has no lockdown at all, meaning during the Scandinavian should not have any kind of this impact over maybe the CBT and also with the community-based enterprise of other CBE. What do you think?
So I think on the case of CBT, I actually think, this is just my personal opinion, but I actually think it would actually be one of the earlier ones to get back into business, simply because everybody wants to travel, but we can't go internationally, or in a while, the hassle of having to fly internationally would be too high that people would then prefer to travel internally in the country. But I think the issue with CBT is actually more that they're so hard to find. People who want to travel like community, through community-based tourism actually have no kind of place that they can go to kind of look for all the community-based tourist activities that they can find. So I think CBT would be back soon. But as I said, this is my opinion. I think CBT would be back soon. But the people who would be traveling to these community-based tourisms would actually be more Thai people rather than foreigners coming in from abroad and traveling to these community tourist spots. On the concept of Sweden, I think my understanding for that is because they opted to go for herd immunity, so that
right.
rather than like lockdown like us, that's why their country can reopen quite quickly, but they've had a lot of sacrifices there. So I don't think we could like immediately kind of be like them. So I think even with the CBT that we will be having in our country, it would be more very closed group. So it might be like me with my mom and my dad going into the communities for tourism, rather than like big groups of people who are traveling around.
Because these people are actually, if you're talking about how they try to create a power of negotiation with the government, or maybe the municipality or the local government, like the governor of the province, then that could be starting from the community saying that this is the time that we should reopen and we already ready. So do you think it's also relating with the central government policy or the local, like I said, the local local government of each province? Which one should come first? I mean, which one that you think that it would drive the policy to really make a change or action?
Personally, for me, I think with social media as it is nowadays, it would probably make more sense for the local governors to say yes. And the reason why I say this is actually I have a lot of friends who are coming in from or who flew. So I had a friend who was in Bangkok and flew over to Chiang Mai, and actually couldn't get into the city because there was a quarantine in Chiang Mai that she didn't know about because there's no quarantine in Bangkok. So I think each kind of province are operating on their own already. So it might make more sense for each of the different provinces to be the ones who say like, okay, so we're open, we're back up and operating for tourism. But I'm not sure if they would be willing to do that, because right now I know, like, for example, provinces with no cases at all seem quite reluctant to allow anybody into their province. So I think it's more of on a provincial level if they would actually be willing to allow for it to happen. But I think if they do, then people would then go over.
So you think that informal communications through social media would also be indirectly, thrive or motivate or urge the government to reopen or, really support the community?
Yeah. So I guess looking at it from a design perspective, right? I think when we say opening up, I think we also need to kind of look at who the target audience would be. And the reason why I say informal communication is because I believe that the people who are actually willing to travel right now are actually the younger generation, because we think that we're invincible right now. And we think, even if we go out, like nothing's going to happen. But if I were to invite my mom or my dad out at the moment, they would call me crazy and disown me. So I think it would make more sense to kind of target the young, like find channels that we can target the younger generation to kind of build that awareness for the younger generations who have the spending power to then go into the community-based tourism spending mode. But
Okay.
I think for the older generation, it would probably need the government the big central government to say it's okay to travel. Otherwise, they would feel it's a bit unsafe for them to leave the house.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley. So I have the last question over here. So can Kunwin can read the question for me, please?
We have another question from the attendees joining from Zoom session. As you've mentioned, people are being laid off left and right. And now startups like Uber, Airbnb, and one closer to home, Agoda, are doing the same. How do you see social enterprises and social startups doing in this area? Are they more resilient to such crises as this one?
think this is a tough one, but I would actually say yes. And the reason why I say yes is because actually when we're looking at big startups in terms of scalability, we're not looking for the big kind of like the big, you know, hockey stick scaling that the big startups are looking at. And when we're not looking at it that way, the way that social enterprises spend money is shifting closer to the SME side of spending money rather than the startup side. So typically in the startup world, you know, we use a lot of the money that we get from the money that people are using to fund us to drive growth. And a lot of the times, like that growth itself is like marketing spending to drive growth, but financially it doesn't really make sense yet. So I think that's why, you know, unless you've really hit that part where you're generating a profit, then the moment a crisis like this strikes, you're a bit more vulnerable than people who are generating consistent profits. And I think people who are operating on the on the social enterprise side are, because they're operating on a more like SME level, but with a tech scalability, what you see there is people, they're generating profit since the very beginning, but maybe not a lot of profit. And slowly integrating technology to be able to make that profit slowly scale. So I think that's what the main difference is. And I know there's like a big movement going on right now in kind of like a lot of people who used to, you know, live in the startup world and we're like, well, this funding doesn't really make sense, or this investment doesn't really make sense. So if any of you are interested, there's a concept, or there's a website that you can visit called Zebras United. So Zebra United is a group of people who don't believe in unicorns anymore, I guess, is a way they put it. So unicorns are like that one mystical creature who pops up over a period of time. But if you're a zebra, then you're everywhere, and you can be everywhere. And that black and white on your body is business and social impact. And by kind of going into zebra mode and banding together and helping support each other, and not like really spending too much into growth all at once, I guess, that would also be able to help. So yeah, my 2 cents.
Okay.
It's interesting you talked about marketing. How do you see, like in this time, how can social enterprise markets or promote their business?
Yeah. I think one thing that, and even personally for me, I know I haven't been doing it very well, is storytelling and leveraging social media to be able to get the word out. Yeah, I really haven't been doing that very well. But so I think one skill set that not only social enterprises, but I think a lot of companies in general are not yet too familiar with is digital marketing. But I think there's a magic in digital marketing where you can really see all of the different metrics. You know, why are people buying? What time are people coming in to look at when to buy? I think there's that part, but I also mentioned other than digital marketing is actually your storytelling aspect, because a lot of people now realize that, and they want to spend their money on sustainable businesses more. And I think I know a lot of social enterprises tend to not want to sell their products simply because there's still that mentality of generating a lot of money is a bad thing. And that's typically why when we don't I've seen over a period of, you know, close to 10 years now, a lot of social enterprises die off, even though their founders were so passionate in what they were doing, but because they believe that, you know, they shouldn't be making money through helping people. And in the end, it didn't sustain. So I think that's also one big part. They don't want to tell the story to then be able to generate the sales, because the mentality that it's like a selfish thing to do, or or they don't want to be bragging about, you know, what they're doing to help people. But I guess if I can just share, like I used to be in that hat as well. And then I realized like, but in the end, if you don't tell your story, then you're also unable to help the people that you want to help in the long run, because then you're also not going to survive. So I think, yeah, more social enterprises, it would be great if more social enterprises can be able to, you know, kind of jump into the trainings of storytelling. And I know there's awesome people out there who would be willing to, you know, set up sessions for social enterprises as well. So I'm gonna just shout out a few names. So I know Glow Story are an amazing team, and they've helped a lot of social enterprises get their word out. So I think it would be great if you know, the focus can also shift to there, so that we can survive a bit more and help society a bit more with our survival.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, but I think that today we have the fruitful information, also the comments and the discussion, very good discussions. So I would like to ask the attendees, or also definitely the speaker, Dora, do you think will be the before we closing? So do you have any like the last tips for us to, what should we apply, and then what should we do after this? So can you give like short tips, or
Yeah.
I can ask like other people also, Dr. Saul, you can join in, you can jump in anytime. Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So I guess for me, it's if you know you want to do good, don't overthink it. Okay. And just do something, I guess. Because if you have good intentions, whatever it is that you do, it's going to impact somebody out there. So please don't overthink it. I think humanity thinks too much. If you go out there and do something, then you'll see what the impact is, and that impact will hopefully trickle over to other people as well. So yeah, that's my tip for today.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else? You want to share something?
Maybe I just want to strengthen this point. I fully agree with Dora, and I realized that a couple of minutes ago you also say that you are not a policy person, and it's not your cup of tea. And I think I start to understand what you mean, and I really fully agree, especially nowadays when we experience this crisis. Doers type of people. This action orientation is extremely important nowadays. We don't have time for conferences. We don't have time for writing studies, PDF files. We need to do action. And thank God today we heard wonderful examples about how from a grocery store shopping will be a new business and solution growing. And exactly that's what we need to do. And I came here because I was very curious which way you are working and what are the similarities and differences. And it would be wonderful to continue somehow this kind of networking. So if you really think seriously that you want to organize something like a hackathon or what, feel free to contact us and we can help with our experience to you in any way possible. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saul. So anyone else to share, or some tips or some ideas that you want to be like before we say goodbye today? So anyone want to jump in? Okay. So if not, I would say that it's via call off today. And thank you so much. We are so honored to have you here, Dora. So, and thank you so much for give us knowledge and also fruitful information that you've provided to us. And thank you for all attendees from here in Zoom and also Facebook Live. And I really hope to see you the next sessions very soon. We will announce via our Facebook website. So today, have a good evening, have a good afternoon. Bye-bye. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you very much.
Bye.